Dundrum is an affluent suburb just 20 minutes by Lewis commuter rail service from the centre of Dublin. Just below and to the side of the Lewis Bridge is historic St Nathi's Church and Graveyard in the Church of Ireland parish of Taney. A church dedicated to St Nathi has been here at least since the 8th century. St Nathi was an Irish priest who founded and was abbot of a monastery here in the 7th century. Over the centuries, a number of different churches were built, and during the 16th century religious Reformation, ownership of the church and its grounds was transferred to the Anglican Church. The current building, constructed in 1760, was restored in 1910 by its vicar, Canon William Monk Gibbon, who was rector of Taney Parish for 34 years. Gibbon is buried with his family opposite the church entrance. He and his wife, Isabella Agnes Pollock, had 7 children, and their son, William Monk Gibbon, a renowned Irish writer and poet, is buried in front of his parents' grave. A few yards further along the front of the graveyard is a garden of remembrance for cremated remains. This section was originally used for deceased patients of the local mental hospital and was known as the asylum plot. Much of what we know about this church and graveyard comes from the 1895 book The Parish of Taney, which was co-authored by Francis Bell and Everard Hamilton, both of whom are interred in the graveyard. Everard is one of several members of the Hamilton family buried here. Over 10,000 burials have been recorded, but hundreds, perhaps thousands, more graves are hidden beneath an accumulation of earth and vegetation. The earliest visible grave dates back to 1734 and commemorates members of the Crane family. The grave markers, which range from simple to impressive, honour rich and poor. Among the notable people interred here is the 19th century Irish physicist George Johnston Stoney, the first person to postulate in 1891 the existence of the electron, which is critical in the world of electronics. He resided in Dundrum for much of his life, and after dying in London in 1911, his ashes were brought back here to be with his deceased wife, mother and sister. During a short life, William Halliday developed an amazing knowledge of languages, including Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Persian, Arabic, and Sanskrit. He trained as a solicitor, but his real passion was for the Irish language, and in 1808 he was one of the founders of the Gaelic Society of Dublin, an effort to save the Irish language. He was only 24 when he died of consumption in October 1812, just 6 months after his marriage. David Richard Pigott, born in 1823, was a former Master of the Court of Exchequer and later Master of the Court of King's Bench, one of the senior courts of common law in Ireland. He died in 1906, aged 83. The father and 2 sisters of poet W.B. Yeats and painter Jack B. Yeats rest here. Susan Mary, known as Lily, and Elizabeth Corbett, known as Lolly, attended St Nathi's Church. They were pioneers of the arts and craft movement in Ireland and the Celtic revival of the early 20th century. Lily specialised in embroidery, and Lolly worked as an art teacher, printer and publisher. They formed Koala Press in Rathfarnham that published works by their brother W.B. Yeats and others. Lolly was interred here in 1940 and Lily in 1949. Patrick Bride of Stephen's Green was an eminent druggist who also served as High Sheriff of Dublin and a Director and Governor of the Bank of Ireland. He died in 1808, aged 88. Dr. Usher was the local dispensary doctor in Dundrum, who was killed in 1917 by a reversing car in the car park of Dundrum railway station. He was 77 years old. Usher's friends erected in his honour a stone obelisk above a trough that provided water for passing horses. During Ireland's War of Independence, James Burke, one of 12 spectators shot dead when British troops opened fire on players and spectators during a Gaelic football match in Croke Park Stadium on the 21st of November 1920, a day now known as Bloody Sunday. The British action was in retaliation for the assassination earlier that day of 14 British agents who had arrived in Ireland to eliminate members of Michael Collins' intelligence squad. The graveyard has many Irish Republican graves. During the Civil War that followed the signing of the treaty that ended the Irish War of Independence, 21-year-old Lorcan McSenior was killed in 1922 while fighting for the anti-treaty forces in a skirmish with the National Army of the new Irish Free State. Patrick Doyle was another anti-treaty nationalist killed in action during the Civil War in 1922. He was a member of the Gaelic League, which was dedicated to restoring the Irish language. Another casualty of the Civil War was Lieutenant George Leo Cruz, one of the soldiers of the pro-treaty National Army, killed in action in 1923. During the Second World War, a 24-year-old RAF Volunteer Reserve, Sergeant William Anthony Kavanagh from Dundrum, died as a result of a cycling accident while home on holiday in 1944. Seamus Brennan was an Irish politician who resided in Dundrum for many years. He represented Dublin South in Ireland's Parliament continuously for 27 years, topping the poll on several occasions. He held several ministerial positions in Fianna Fáil governments, and as Minister of Transport, he opened the Dundrum bypass in 2002. He died in July 2008, aged 60. Buried here are hundreds of children who were victims of typhus, cholera, consumption, and other diseases that ravaged families in the 18th and 19th centuries. The inscription on the Turner gravestone reveals that the grave contains 5 children up to the age of 3. John Byrne was 18 when he died in 1880. He lies here along with 3 children who died at an early age. The Denison gravestone lists the dead of a son aged 1 year and a daughter aged 17. Patrick Murphy was married twice. His gravestone commemorates 11 of his children who died at a young age. Jane, aged 5 years and 8 months, Joseph, aged 4 years and 8 months, Esther, aged 14, John, aged 4 and 8 months, and 7 more of his children who died young. The graveyard is well kept. However, many of the monuments have been damaged or weathered by wind and rain, and inscriptions can be difficult or impossible to decipher. Even with a map of the cemetery in hand, it can be a challenge to discover the final resting place of some notable personalities. For example, the inscription on the grave of Whitley Stokes is barely legible. Stokes was Regius Professor of Physics at Trinity College, University of Dublin. He also had a large medical practice with an international reputation in treating victims of epidemics. He helped establish the Botanical Gardens and the Zoological Gardens in Dublin. He had 5 sons and 5 daughters. He died aged 82 in 1845 and is buried here with members of his family. Now almost hidden under extensive foliage at the back of the graveyard is a gate that may once have been an entrance used by Roman Catholics attending funerals here at a time when they were barred from using the main gates of a Protestant church. As the churchyard predates the disestablishment of the Church of Ireland in 1869, it is open for burial to all those who live within the boundaries of the parish of Taney, whatever their denomination. St Nathi's is one of Dublin's oldest graveyards. Even if you don't have a relative buried here, it's well worth a visit. For quiet contemplation, inspection of attractive monuments, and discovery of emotive memorial inscriptions. In this dormitory of the dead in Dundrum, County Dublin.